I thought I would give three definitions of communism because communism is one of those tricky words that people get offended over until you explain to them what it really means. So I see communism having three definitions. The first definition is a pre Marxist communism. Communism, by that definition, and back then before Marx, was kind of this primitive, romantic utopianism mixed with the kind of the gift economy systems, which I have to thank my downstairs neighbor Alex Gendler on his TED Talks video about, constantly dreamed of and a part of the Western canon, sadly. Before Marx, there was a lot of French and Romantic poets that would talk about this utopian society of communism, that communes would work together and everybody will be happy. It'll be the end of the world, literally. The second definition is Marxist communism. That's the definition that we probably all use by Marx and what Marx meant. And that's a Marxist term where everybody transitions from socialism to overabundance and automative society of high level intellects. And Marx saw socialism as nothing more than a transition to this endgame, this end of the world Hegelianism or something like that, where everything's abundant and we're all good, and it was kind of like a dream. But I think the last definition, the neoliberal postmodern form of communism, kind of rules us today. And that's kind of a totalitarian, forced egalitarian Star Trek the Borg, highly individual yet ironically collective when the cha-cha slide comes on, no rules society with an automative AI enlightenment for art colonies and constant bickering about who's on the queer status. That sadly has destroyed the definition of communisms because things became cultural and not practical. I think the neoliberal postmodern communist definition takes cue from the pre Marxist communism, but I think it's the second definition that we always have to remember what really communism is instead of thinking about this USSR kind of definition of letting it be practice or something, because white people get so confused like it's some kind of endgame or something like that. But you have to remember the traits of communism are five things. Communism is a stateless society. There's no I there. It's a stateless society where there's no state, you know. It's a classless society where there's no class, and that's social class. So everybody's in the same class, and there's no state. It's just a border you cross, and you're there. It's a moneyless society. We don't have money, or there may be money, but it's not the money we think it is. It's no Wall Street or anything like that. It could be the gift economy. This is the most important one. Everyone owns the means of production. There's no private property. Now, you could say this is clearly a definition of socialism, yet there's such a thing called National Socialism and right-wing socialism and socialism with class. So I think communism puts into the Marxist thing what socialism is, owning the means of production, which takes cues from that. But I think it's more about overabundance and free access to all resources. So if you accidentally get your girlfriend pregnant, you can get her plan B anytime you want, or you want to do something, you do that. So that's where the problematic thing comes, and where it basically becomes less and less about a Promethean, let's go to Mars and colonize, to a really lazy gamer society. So here's my cultural criticisms with regard to this postmodern communism, or definitions of communism that has been misconcepted or misconstrued. The first one is from each according to their needs. Now, it is a very whimsical thing, but how do the mentally ill work? If somebody has no legs, I guess they'll be in a chocolate factory pressing down the things and making chocolate. How is a person who's blind supposed to work? How is a woman supposed to work? If there's such a thing called pink collar work under capitalism, can't women just stay at home and have babies? I mean, this is very up in the air. Free associations. Now, this is a very interesting one, because why should individualism, especially under an American neoliberal capitalist consumer class one, be still allowed in a communist society? Free associations is nothing more than this libertarian individual worship. I mean, I would think the purpose of communism would be a collective interest, and that individualism is just this kind of American thing. You still want to shop at Hot Topic and still be an e-girl, then I guess communism can give you free associations to everyone who has an OnlyFans account. And a very, very problematic one, I would say, is hierarchy. Well, what kind of hierarchy? Is this cultural, or it's all in our heads? It's a social hierarchy. What about the strong and the weak? What about Jay Cutler versus some weak nerd who wants to shoot up the school? This is really silly. And the basis of hierarchy is the basis of the whole Nouvelle Droit, or the whole New Right school of thinking. That how the far right has become a culture as its own is that just allowing hierarchy as normal. This is like a religious thing. And to assume that hierarchy is always in the air and something like sin is bad. Now, class is not hierarchy. It may be hierarchy in class, but you can abolish that. But again, it's not to say that hierarchy should justify the capitalist. The capitalist has got there for unfair reasons. It's more like natural, innate, organic hierarchies in a way. And we can definitely have definitions of that. So fully automated luxury communism sounds too much like what we can have in a broken capitalist system with robots. Something that even Nick Land would say. That if all those traits of communism, moneyless, stateless, owning the means of production, maybe, why can't we just make robots and then they do capitalism and then everyone pretends they're a capitalist class and then there's no need for communism anymore, quote unquote, because capitalism has already produced that in a very broken, rundown capitalist system. So many of the traits of communism are being co-opted by this hyper-accelerated capitalism to make people more lazy, and what they think are Marxists is this like dumb platypus society retardation. So a bigger part of this is nationalism, or any organic natural things like hierarchies, a part of the creation of normal communist state. I think yes, because race is real, nature will always win. Okay, these things are real, in which I believe communists never had a dialogue with. Race is real. Our own sexuality, including homosexuality and paraphilia, is real. Our need to work is real, like woodpeckers getting wood and beavers moving beavers moving wood to make dams work. That's real, and violence, that's real too. When monkeys get mad, they do monkey things and they trash. Human beings are like monkeys, and so violence is real. And communism is not promising to create a happy society. It could be violent, and people could turn on each other. So all these things, race, sexuality, work, and violence, these things are constantly denied in civilized society. The neoliberal society calls people they don't like racist or sexist, or ironically, under a capitalist system, you're some evil communist, and then finally you're some murderer, So when neoliberalism, the modernists, the transhumanists deny these four things, nature always kicks back. And this is why we have a school like the far right. That's why communism is nothing more than a Eurocentric fantasy for white European people or white middle class people that denies realities of the world, as it constantly sees itself a part of some progressive white people enlightenment, which is kind of like what the middle class is. And this is why ultimately people have problems with communism. So I just want to say that Fort Thunder, that Rhode Island concert hall in the 90s, that's not communism. Just because a bunch of trust fund dumb young white kids are happy in a dorm together does not make that communism. That doesn't mean they're in a gift economy and sharing shit and being liberal, and that's not communism. That's just some platypus society fantasy. Communism is not in my mind. It's not something religious or self-improvement Platonism as Alain Badiou wants you to believe. Or even the concept of anarcho-communism. That is a tool to get the crime-think white hipsters, stupid punk rockers reading Marx. Anarchy, the school of anarchy should never overcome communism. Communism will take down anarchy. Everybody who's a hardcore communist and knows this. Anarchy is only a transition. Too much American hype over individualism. That individualism is the real decadent threat from capitalism. That's what capitalism has produced. And so anarcho-communism or free associations or this interest of too much magnifying on individualism is a problem, and a lot of dumb white millennials with OnlyFans love this. But, at the end of the day, this communism all just sounds like happy fascism to me, some happy Juche stuff. So why not read Arctos and become a fascist then? I mean, fascism has a rich history too. And ignore what they say when capitalism is in decay, because those very people also deny race, sex, work. I mean, not work, but violence and the natural realities of the world. And this is why communism keeps failing, is that, or that when it does succeed, it realizes that, some Ukrainian Polish communists will always win, because ultimately you have to have nationalism under communism. Nationalism is the missing key ingredient to all communist parties, because these are realities of the world, not some kind of enlightenment of capitalism and decay. So those are some of my definitions of communism, especially my hatred toward the platypus society kind. But if ever allowed, it's just kind of this happy fascism for middle class white people. Thanks for listening.